So this is the path spline. I can move the path around and it will build a way for John to go through. You can also change its width or whatever, like it's pretty dope. Hi guys, my name is Baradante, and welcome back to the game, version 0.03, I guess. I lost count. So, this is looking very different from the last time we've seen each other. Let me show you guys around a little bit. One thing immediately I'll mention that the main problem I'm fighting right now is, of course, the performance. Things has gone pretty slow since I started playing around with all these complex leaves and realistic shadows from everything and all that. I am using like this sunlight right now with projected shadows, which are not actually going to be in the actual game. There will be an overcast weather going on, but you know, this way things are clearer to work with. The game will actually look more like this, and like with the clouds blocking the sun like this. And this way I can actually go ahead and turn off the shadows from the sun to be calculated at all, and the frame rate jumps up to the 45 frames per second right away, which is the cap I've set up on the editor right now, so things are much snappier this way. But overall, things seem to be a bit slower when I'm recording as well, so I don't know, everything is work in progress for now. But yeah, no more gray block environments anymore. Now we're walking around in the actual forest among all these bushes and small trees and big trees and everything. So things are pretty intense now, and the flashlight is working too. And those guys still want their asses kicked. Boom. Oh my god. Forgot how fast you are. So yeah, John's hands are kind of wonky right now. That is because I actually downloaded the updated version of this MetaHuman for John. With each new version of Unreal Engine 5, this is 5.2, you kind of should update the assets for your MetaHuman, like regenerate and download for each new version. And this John, I actually updated his hair, like it's a different hair now, that for some reason looks absolutely black today. It wasn't the case before. I don't know why. But yeah, also a different outfit and everything. I don't know why exactly you should regenerate your MetaHuman for a new Unreal Engine version. I guess something under the hood with the shaders or something is improved, so there's that. But yeah, some of the animations look even weirder than before, which is not a problem, of course, because they are just placeholder animations for now. But yeah, this is our forest. As it is right now, without the sunlight, it's pretty snappy to walk around in. Like, the frame rate is not that terrible, like 40 FPS in the editor. I think it's doing something, considering this is like, well, in terms of the amount of textures and polygons and transparencies and shadows on screen at a time, this is the final product level of detail for the GPU. So it won't get worse than this, one may say. It probably will, but generally it works. But right now my biggest effort is making sure that things get as fast as possible. A lot of things I have in mind, but it'll take time. Mostly it's about replacing these photorealistic assets with something I would make myself. Not necessarily unrealistic, but made differently, so things would run faster. We'll see about that. But yeah, here's our tree from the last episode that we spent working in ShapeLab. So this tree was sculpted in VR for those of you guys who haven't seen the last episode. Pretty cool, everything is working just fine in this new forest. Yeah, bushes have some animations on them like this. Big trees, I think I turned it off to make things simpler in my tests anyway. It didn't change much. But yeah, it's pretty cool to run around the location that looks like this now. And this is actually the main story of this video, because the whole thing, and let me turn on the sunlight for this. This is why I usually work with the sunlight here, because it just makes things look more clearly like this. So this right here is actually fully procedurally generated. So these are the guides I'm using, And this is the feature that was introduced in the very latest update of Unreal Engine 5.2. So I'm like super lucky that I started working with the environment the moment this thing came out. It's actually called experimental at the moment, but it totally works. You can do a lot of things with it, especially thanks to the fact that there's nanite and you can throw all kinds of objects around and it doesn't really affect the performance, unless there's a lot of transparencies, of course. And by the way, simplifying the textures, this is how much I simplified these amazingly hyper-realistic trees from Megascans. Like, I super downscaled everything, and if you look at the shader complexity, they're like super green. And smaller trees are, for now, still super red because they're much higher quality, even though I'm also using much lower resolution version of these textures. Still, like, they were super realistic, and these are much simpler ones. And it didn't seem to change the performance much, so a lot of things to experiment with still to see how things actually can improve. But yeah, this is super cool to be able to generate the environment just like that. So this is the path spline. I can move the path around and it will build a way for John to go through in a new place. You can also change its width or whatever, like, it's pretty dope. And the best part, all of this was specifically coded by me using these new nodes for procedural content generation. So most of the things happen inside of these little nodes right here. And yeah, it's pretty dope. You can use like any kind of shape, whether it's a spline or like a cube or like any topology like polygon shape. Like this tree right here, it has a tag. So if I look at a tag, it's called procedural content generation big objects. It's a tag, just a little label that I put on it. So I came up with this name, and this name right here, it's searched for, and the forest is cleared around these objects with this tag. So if I move the tree around, and this time I seem to have to force regeneration, it will actually build the whole forest specifically around just this object. To begin with, of course, I can also add a guide to clear up the space more around the tree, but overall there will never be any bushes or trees that grow through my tree, which is dope. But yeah, mostly I'm building everything using splines because it seems to be the easiest thing to build around and, you know, all that. But actually, the first version I did was using the old cubes that used to shape up the level. If you guys noticed from the previous videos, it's actually the same layout I used to have with the gray cubes, but now it's all live with actual trees and everything, and the actual landscape. So really don't need the cubes anymore. In the first version of this, I used to like actually use the cubes with a tag for dense trees. So I was generating forests wherever the cubes were. So literally just one click transforming all the block out into the actual forest. But later I realized that it's easier to create a big patch of forest and then cut out the bold spots for John to walk around in. So yeah, things are pretty awesome. Like, you can control if things get more rare or like get smaller. If we look at the profile of the forest, the trees kind of like get smaller and smaller to a certain amount closer to the edge. And you can control all of it. Like, I created special subgraphs with a lot of things to control in terms of like how much it scales down and all of that. It's really cool. And yeah, I'm throwing around these little, like the simplest bush that's just covering like the forest floor, this like one polygon texture, and this one is another one, just thrown around like at a 2-3 centimeters height like this, all over the ground with a certain rule, like it's spreading next to the forest, and everywhere under the trees. If you go in there, even though it's like pretty dense in here, like it's all over the forest floor, which is, as you think about it, not really necessary to put it there, but honestly, it's not impacting the performance, I think. Mostly is the transparencies you're seeing, not the transparencies you're not seeing. But of course, I think everything matters. But yeah, this is the thing I've been busy with most of the time, like programming this forest generation, as well as, well, trying to make it run faster. And I succeeded to a certain extent, but there's more work to be done for sure. So yeah, if any of you guys have been playing around with Unreal Engine 5 and you have any advice on how to make things simpler, I feel like the key to the performance here is just in the kind of assets I'm using. Even though it's Nanite, it's not really just the Nanite that is the problem. Nanite is like showing polygons and it's fast at that and all that, which is really cool. To those of you guys who don't know, Nanite is this new incredible technology that lets Unreal Engine show millions and millions of polygons on the screen with pretty much like almost no impact to the performance. There's a certain bottom performance penalty that happens when you turn on Nanite, but if you turn it on, it doesn't matter how many polygons is on the screen. So right here, if I show triangles, everything, including like the landscape plane or a landscape surface, everything is Nanite except for this chrome sphere right here. And John, like only like the static meshes, including meshes with certain floating animation of leaves, like this counts as Nanite, but actual skeletal meshes like characters, they can't be included in this. So characters are just normal, but all of this has no business with like levels of detail or anything. They're like always super high definition and super fast. But the problem is not with Nanite, but with virtual shadows, which is a silent killer of Unreal Engine 5 and actually 4. I think it was introduced back in Unreal Engine 4. So if I just turn off shadows from the sun, we'll see much snappier performance right away. So we can just fly through all the leaves, no problem at all. So that's one big thing about it. Another big thing is the one that's still present right now, which is Lumen, right? The technology that is creating this ambient light. So if I overall turn on the overcast lighting again, like this, so now we don't need any shadows from the sun because the sun is blocked at all. Now we have these cool deep shadows from all the trees, and they're just automatically kind of like ray traced. Not kind of like, they are ray traced. It's actual ray tracing, and if you have hardware ray tracing, it will use that to speed things up. But if you don't have it, don't have like RTX cards or something, it will still work because it's actually a highly optimized blend of ray tracing and not ray tracing. And overall, all these rays are traced in this Lumen scene, which is a like greatly simplified version of the whole environment. And certain things are included, certain things are not included, like the small bushes that are on the ground. If I switch back to normal view, like these bushes, they're gone from the Lumen scene because I turned them off for ray tracing. They're not included in shading. So that's one way I was trying to improve the performance. And yeah, like complex characters or something, they're also just showing up black. So only static meshes is just like for the environment pretty much. But it's working pretty awesomely, and if you have changes in the environment, it will update in real time. So it's a pretty cool thing that unlocks this ambient lighting for all kinds of computers actually. But all of that combined with very complex transparencies and super complex just geometry of trees. Not in terms of the amount of polygons, but just how much of like deep areas and sticking out things, you know, it's like super complex thing where shadows need to bounce back and forth all the time. So it's just super complex. I think that's also a problem, that forest in general is like a super complex shapes. So yeah, anyway, that's what I've been playing around with. not a lot to report, only the fact that all of this is looking so cool. And here's a cool giant rectangular light right here that can light the whole scene right here with super soft shadows from everything. It makes it look like a tabletop game or something. Really dope. Of course, the performance, like everything, is gonna be in slow motion because of how hard these shadows are. This is also those virtual shadows, but in super high, like, radius of smoothing of these shadows. So it's gonna be super tough to render, but it's looking pretty flashy. Oh my god. I mean, slow motion makes things easier a bit. Alright, how you doing? Look at these shadows. Looks so cool. It's like I'm running around in cycles in Blender. Really dope. So yeah, it's funny how you really need to be very careful about what exactly you choose to show, you know? Complex forest, okay, but minimize projected shadows, I guess. And by the way, if you guys think like, why don't you just turn off these complex virtual shadows? Thing is, since I'm using Nanite, actually Nanite works faster with virtual shadows. If right here I switch back to just shadow maps, which I can do immediately like this, the frame rate gets even worse, like things get very sluggish. And that's because of Nanite. Like Nanite, considering there's like a lot of super dense polygons all over the place, no matter the distance, this is very hard for shadow maps to work with. So it's actually faster to use virtual shadows if you're using Nanite everywhere. And this is like a full Nanite forest. Where was it? Oh, right here. So yeah, this is way more responsive. Maybe not necessarily in the frame rate, it's almost the same, maybe a little bit higher, but like the latency becomes a lot smaller. But yeah, nothing beats turning off shadows completely. So yeah, I'm thinking more or less the game will be looking kind of like this. It will be this infinite, twisted, weird forest. In the beginning it will look like a normal forest, but then it will get weirder and weirder with strange things happening, and these guys will happen somewhere around that time. Just in terms of timing, I'm just saying that these guys won't appear immediately the way things are right now. But yeah, nice sky like this, soft lighting, very realistic kind of looking, and really cool never-ending forest that you can only go through in a certain path, with occasional patches of free areas and something strange going on in them. Ooh, big guy. Forgot I put you here. You'll die just like the rest of them. So yeah, I gotta say, the whole thing feels a lot more exciting now in terms of like actually feeling the vibe of the game shaping up with the actual environment present. I'm planning to have a special mode where, like right here, I'm generating actual like trees and short trees and small bushes and flat grass meshes from all of my points that I generate on the landscape. But I can just disable them, and then I can debug only the points generation that leads to them. So in terms of just the layout, you can kind of work around with this. So I assume this will work noticeably faster. Not super fast though, because it still needs to generate and process and sample geometries, cut out one cubes from another cubes. Right here you can see how these bigger cubes, which are like trees, and smaller cubes of bushes and smaller trees are cut out around them. There's never, like, that's the kind of thing you control to make sure it doesn't happen. And in here there's like this darker color, which is like the density or whatever, like value of each of the cube that gets lower closer to the edge or closer to the spline of the edge of the forest. And the closer it is, the lower this density is, and based on that you use like a special threshold or something, and you make them smaller or kill some of them based on this darkness. So yeah, that's pretty much what the whole forest is, just a whole bunch of points thrown around, which later get replaced with actual assets. Hey, how about showing actual trees? I mean, this is also fun. Hey, I can run around everywhere now. So yeah, the actual like walls of the level where John can go or not go is only based on the actual collision of the trees that are generated along the path. So if I turn off the trees, John can go everywhere, which on one hand probably makes the whole development of the game kind of harder? Question mark? I don't know. This content generation thing is like super new, so maybe things are different now. It's up to me to decide. But overall, like, I don't know about you guys, but as a player, as a gamer, I just hate transparent walls. So, if there's a way to only put walls where there's an actual object that qualifies as something that can block John's way, then I'm a happy guy to be able to build the whole level just like that. In the nearest future, I plan to work more on just the assets, the appearance of the forest more, because these are all just the basic bushes and trees that I downloaded from Quixel Megascans library, which is free for Unreal Engine users. And like, it's cool and all, but again, it feels like it was made to be super realistic, no compromise kind of looking trees and all, trees and bushes. But when it comes to games, you need something that wouldn't be so heavy on like all these overlapping transparencies. I feel like that's the main issue. Anyway, you guys get the point. What's really cool about all of this is that I can select the main point of the whole forest, put it somewhere else, and all the guides and everything will follow, cut out exactly where they should cut out, and land themselves on this new geometry, like all the hills and everything will be accounted for, so the trees are placed in the new place. One problem I found with that, like one limitation, I mean, not a problem, but like where this content generation ends, is pretty much that you can only place around actual assets. Those assets can be like hills or like big rocks that form the landscape, but you can't like, you know, make the like this path spline to carve out a little like if it used to be a river kind of thing where it would be dug into the ground. So it would like actually sculpt the landscape a little bit with itself as well. Just with this spline. I can't seem to be able to do that. Not only like I was looking it up a lot, and it doesn't seem to be a thing with this current version of procedural content generation. But at the same time, there's this thing, a separate plugin made by Epic Games for this Unreal Engine 5 that lets you use these same splines to build rivers. And rivers, they build like a plane of water and actually dig into the landscape. They actually do that with the spline, but it's not just procedural content generation part, there's also some kind of special code involved. I wonder if I can use that plugin and somehow just completely turn off the water and use those splines as like also with the tags of path to use it for content generation. So it would be like both things at once. But it would be kind of a hacky thing to do. It will probably be slower than it could be, you know, something like that. But anyway, it's not like I'm planning too much of the like huge, you know, cliffs or something like that. Some will be, but mostly it will be, you know. In all the demos that Epic Games show about procedural content generation, they actually shape quite complex environments with cliffs and giant mountains using the actual assets of mountains. Like they just spawn a giant just asset of a rock. And on that rock they place trees and all of that. So you can do whatever you want, including really big landscape forming assets being thrown around and blended into the actual landscape right here. But yeah, there's that. Let me know what you guys think. I think this is really dope. All of this is making things so much faster for me as a one-man game development studio or whatever. Really excited, but a lot of work to do, especially in terms of optimization, because I don't want my game to be 30 FPS. I will do my best to avoid that, that's for sure. If it has to be much simpler, I don't mind that. We gotta do something about it. I do need high quality lighting, so I will keep the lighting. It's all about how I'll need to stylize or optimize the assets of the forest. I think that's the way to go for me. And yeah, for now this is it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye! My dog seems very excited about me being loud. Why do you look like you're gonna jump at me right now? There's a dog over there, trust me.